Now, the Mets, since the beginning of spring training, have established that fully healthy, their 1-2-3 will be Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, and Chris Bassitt. Now, today we're going to discuss who the starting pitcher for will be in the postseason rotation. We do have quite a few options, some pros and cons, and we're going to go over them right now. So, who should be the number 4 starter in the postseason for the Mets?
On 3-2, Vader. Swings and misses, strike 3. He struck him out. 5 Met pitchers combined for the second no-hitter in New York Mets history.
Now, outside that top 3 regarding health, I would say that most of these options have had their good, they've had their bad, and that pretty much widens the debate.
And now with Rob Manfred, of course, having to tinker with Major League Baseball, which didn't need tinkering. Now there's no day off and travel day between games 3 and 4, meaning you're going to have to use a 4th starter just to get through the division series if need be. Something you have to keep in mind if the Mets do find a way to choke the National League East. You're going to have to use more pitchers because guess what? You have to use those 3 guys. 2-day layoff between the wild card and the NLDS, so we're going to have to use starters. And again, we have the big 3, which shows even more importance to win the National League East.
And we all know that ball players play every single day, but as for pitchers, that 4 to 5 days rest is extremely important to get them in their sort of rhythm. So let's get to the number 4 options. Now, throughout the entire season, I'd say that David Peterson has been trying to prove himself as a possible part to the starting rotation next year and also to earn a playoff spot. Now, one of the main advantages to having David Peterson being one of the postseason starters would possibly be the fact that he's the only lefty starting option currently. He's obviously got that elite put-away slider, and he's got that great perceived velocity from the southpaw side with great extension. It's just a different type of style that you can add to your postseason rotation. The problem is, we all know it by now. Major control and command issues. He struggles to give you length and also manage his pitch count. He's a terrible high-leverage pitcher, loses his head a lot. He lacks a lot of consistency to be trusted every 5 days. What do you think about the possibility of the Mets approaching this different style, or has this part of the book just been full-on closed on?
Obviously, the Mets are fully right-handed, and it would be nice. Obviously, the Dodgers are doing the reverse challenge of they have 5 lefties and Tony Gonsolin now. It is interesting, but obviously we've gone through in multiple videos. Please click every single one that we've done on David Peterson. There are people who say, hey, he's got good stuff, but when he's walking the bases loaded to the Chicago Cubs and then giving up doubles, that's not good in my book. And yes, he has some good starts. So is Yohan Lopez. The postseason is not a spot in a time for walks, especially when the runs are going to be at a premium. You're going up against some of the best pitchers in the game. 1 run can beat you. And do you trust giving the ball to David Peterson against the Atlanta Braves, the LA Dodgers? I do not. The walks are the biggest problem, and we say no to walks here because we don't like giving up free bases.
The only argument that he pretty much has is kind of just suppressing the high power bat. Guys like Freddie Freeman and guys like Austin Riley, suppressing the barrel against that put-away slider that he has. But at the end of the day, this guy has not shown that he can put up consistency. And like we said in a video of 6 players that should not belong on the postseason roster, David Peterson is one of them, and we just really do not trust this guy in an everyday rotation, let alone the postseason. And then there's Trevor Williams, the other piece in the Javi Baez trade that we got in exchange for PCA, the trade that no one really likes to talk about anymore. And we all know there's tons of positives with this guy. He's elite at locating pitches. He has incredible command of the zone. He's an elite contact manager, strikeout heavy fastball and sinker mix. He's a versatile back end of the rotation type of guy. And he's excelled at spot starting this year and also coming out of the bullpen, basically being put in every single possible role this year. And he's done very well 99 times out of 100. Now, the problem is he has not pitched in the postseason. He can give up a lot of base runners, so that can bring up a high pitch count in a game. So you might only get 4 or 5 innings from him. And it also could tax the rest of the bullpen with a short outing of the starter and the fact that he's the only pure long reliever in that bullpen all season long.
Way more competent option if, again, last case, he would be the 5th starter in a 5-man rotation potentially in the postseason, because we damn well know there's one guy we're going to get to who both of us would probably get the plague before let him start a playoff game. Not going to be pretty. He'll give you 5 innings. It'll be a quality start. The other problem is, again, are you willing to give up a quality start, which would be probably 3 to 4 runs, 5 innings pitch? A guy that's going to attack the zone. You know, if you line him up with another team's 4th starter, it's possible. You trust him against the Dodgers. He did pitch pretty well. He settled down very nicely in LA. And I think definitely in the postseason, you'll see using starters out of the bullpen is going to be massive. And Trevor Williams has already shown how valuable he is. An off night for Chris Bassitt, and especially you're going to pull pitchers early. Having guys who can go extra innings as like the backup to the big four is very valuable. And you'll see David Peterson coming out of the bullpen, Trevor Williams better. Hopefully, if you bring in David Peterson when you're already losing. But again, you have Williams to be that extra long man, or kind of like what the Nationals did with Patrick Corbin after, he made his start, go into the bullpen, eat innings. That's what he can do. And I think Trevor Williams could be very valuable as a swing man or an emergency. Hey, early trouble for Taiwan Walker, Carlos Carrasco, Chris Bassitt. Jump to Trevor Williams before damage gets done.
Yeah, I think the only big negative that you're seeing here is if he were to start in the postseason and give you 4 or 5 innings, you're most likely burning him for a possible emergency blow-up that maybe you'll get from Chris Bassitt. Maybe Max Scherzer doesn't have his stuff or something, but there is a possibility you need somebody to come in long relief. The only guy you trust in Trevor Williams, and Trevor Williams is that guy who is supposed to be starting as the 4th guy. So that's the only thing you really need to look at for the long relief standpoint of it. But he is definitely going to be a valuable piece, whether he is in the rotation or coming out of the bullpen. And that brings us to pretty much the overall favorite, I would say, to get the starting pitcher for job in the postseason. That's Carlos Carrasco. One of the positives about Carrasco is that he has postseason experience. He's a seasoned vet. He's one of the ideal guys you want at the back of your rotation, an experienced arm. He does work purely from the stretch. That makes him a very good situational pitcher. He's also a great contact manager, but he's also starting to show his age, and he's 35 years old. There's major concerns about the workload and how deep that he can get into a game on any given night. He does have his small inconsistency of locating his breaking and off-speed stuff. He's definitely showing that father time is a little catching up on him, but he still is one of the proven pitchers and still has that possibility of being effective, I would say, about 7 out of 10 times. There's been a few blowups from this guy sprinkled throughout the season, even though he has hit that batted ball luck wall multiple times this year when it has not gone well. But even though he is not perfect, and we all know it's not going to be perfect from the 4 spot, how much trust do you have in a seasoned vet like Carlos Carrasco, who currently is just kind of aging right now, and you just take what you can get?
You've seen it. It's come after he's been on the injured list, because even before he got hurt, he was pitching his best ball as a Met, and then he gets injured, out 5 weeks, and then he's coming off starting slow. And I think that's what we should expect from a veteran pitcher who's 36 years old. Again, you're talking about guys here than Williams, Peterson, Trev Dog, who have not had any postseason experience. Carlos Carrasco does, and he does have some good, some okay 2020 start in a postseason where he's been bad, but he has the experience of pitching in October. I'm trusting a guy to go out and give me a quality start. Minus Trevor Williams, because Trevor Williams I would first be used as a versatile piece in the postseason. I'm trusting Carlos Carrasco. I know he's been struggling lately, but again, coming off the injury, I expect hopefully his next start is against the Marlins. Carrasco could be versatile out of the bullpen as well, because he does pitch from the stretch, or you could potentially see him and Trevor Williams as the emergency long men.
One of those veterans who has made a deep playoff run before. He knows what this environment is kind of like, and he's seen it recently. And he's had a lot of injuries, which is definitely a concern, but we've kind of taken that risk with pretty much every single pitcher that we have on this staff. I would love for him to kind of piggyback of him maybe being a opener and kind of splitting those innings whenever he needs to be in long relief, where he starts off maybe 4 innings and then he gives you 2 innings in relief. I would love for him to swing back and forth, maybe play that Trevor Williams role if they have like an extra game 5 that they go into, or they go into a game 6 where they need an arm and another arm needs some rest. I think between Carlos Carrasco and Trevor Williams, you can definitely split innings and sprinkle them throughout any series. And then there's your final main possibility of Taiwan Walker. He's been a part of the starting rotation throughout this entire year. He's pitched an entire full season. We already know the rundown of this guy. He does have great control. He has above average command, less of a mileage on his arm, so maybe that does give you an advantage of more innings that he can possibly pitch in the postseason. He does work at a quick pace that can put him definitely on a good roll for the game, but we all know the problem with Taiwan Walker. He has a very vulnerable 4-seam fastball, but he's extremely overconfident in it. He surrenders loads amounts of hard contact. He has trouble getting strikeouts consistently. And as for postseason experience, he's only pitched 1 inning of postseason ball. That was in 2017 for Arizona, where he got tattooed for 4 earned runs and walked 2 batters. We've already established that this guy really cannot be trusted. And we also said that we prefer to not have him on the postseason roster. But as for every pitcher, there is a positive and a negative, even though the negative is probably a lot bigger here for us with Taiwan Walker?
He is the guy who we have given a lot of shit. The Dodgers are not a team that match up well with Taiwan Walker. Taiwan Walker consistently, when he's off, throws a lot of balls out of the strike zone. Dodgers don't chase. I don't trust Taiwan Walker against good teams. Again, his best numbers have come against one of the worst teams like the Marlins or the Nationals and teams like that. And that's the main thing with being in the postseason. You need to be able to trust this guy to, at minimum, go 5 innings and make it a quality start. You can't say that about Taiwan Walker. If he's going well, maybe he can get you a quality start. But against good teams, he does struggle. Some ABs that people get off him, he gives up a lot of hard contact. And depending on what kind of ball we use, and I can't believe we get to say this in the year of 2022, if Manfred does put in the juice ball for the postseason to get some viewership on numbers, we've already seen him go to LA and get absolutely bombed, which, Trey Turner, Mookie Betts, all hitting 470-foot flyouts to left center and right center. Juice ball, those are bombs. I do not have faith in him pitching well in any situation. So for me, that's the last resort. If, Cookie were to go down and you lose Peterson and Trevor Williams, so you would have to have 3 injuries, then you have in game 4, but they do have better options internally. And we'll even get to one other guy who a lot of people think is dead, but is potentially could be a very possible option.
Yeah, and let's talk about that guy right now. Joey Lucchesi. He definitely does have a case here. Coming off of Tommy John surgery, but he is currently fully ramped up. But his rehab was extended beyond the 30-day span to pretty much keep him in AAA. It's basically the old-fashioned roster manipulation. He's staying on the 60-day IL, so he doesn't take off a 40-man roster spot, but he is there if he's needed. He has been starting games in rehab, but let's make a hypothetical. One of our 4 starting pitchers that we choose for this rotation gets injured. Should he be considered as an opener without pitching a single major league inning this year? Or maybe you can piggyback him or piggyback others on top of him right after him in a 2-inning or 3-inning opener in the postseason in case of an emergency. Should he be considered?
He could be in the same situation as Trevor Williams. And hell, if you had to, that wouldn't be a horrible option if you were to do an opener with Williams and then try to get 2 innings out of Lucchesi. But I also feel like he should be the number 1 lefty. Again, if he can get on the field in this next week, fits really well in AAA. He's still starting games, but I would prefer him to see him coming out of the bullpen, which he should be the number 1 lefty on this team, especially with the disappointments of David Peterson. Joely Rodriguez is a seesaw. Could be a world where Joey Lucchesi can be, again, a swingman or potentially a starter. I wouldn't feel confident in that situation. Again, I would, as a swingman, maybe to get an inning or 2. I would love that him try to go 5. I wouldn't, but again, I would love him to be in the bullpen. I want him on the postseason roster.
At this point, I really thought that Joey Lucchesi was ready to go, and we were able to just send out Joely Rodriguez as I made that video of them DFAing him, but they have not done that yet. So I really think he's a lot more valuable than a lot of these bullpen arms that they have and a lot of guys that can't make spot starts, of someone who can throw strikes, who can get outs, and who actually has some pretty good stuff. So finally, let's give the final ranking of who you would choose between the 4. Obviously, putting Lucchesi aside, Carlos Carrasco, David Peterson, Taiwan Walker, and Trevor Williams. From who you trust to who you don't trust, how would you rank them?
If I have number 1 choice is Carlos Carrasco, I'd go number 2 is Trevor Williams. Number 3 would be David Peterson, and number 4, Taiwan Walker. Again, that's just kind of my opinion. David Peterson is garbage, but I do trust him more than Taiwan Walker.
I would pretty much go the same route here, but I'm going to switch Taiwan Walker and David Peterson. I personally think he's a more reliable starter than David Peterson because he actually can throw strikes. But other than that, I mean, the 2 of them are just like drawing straws at this point. Personally, I think that Carlos Carrasco is the guy who deserves it. The only one with postseason experience and a guy that has also made a long run into the postseason who can maybe handle that workload, but we'll see because of his age.